Good morning, ladies and gents. Welcome back to Sofa Safari. Myself and Britta out this morning, a little bit chilly, not too bad. Yesterday was lovely, but this morning is you feel the burn in your fingers, you know. But yeah, we're out this morning. We are looking for hopefully some cats. We had some tracks for one of the Naru males, one of the big male lions. He was walking through the bush somewhere along this way, so we're hoping to intersect his track somewhere around here and pick up on where he is. It's been a little bit quiet on the lion front these days, and one of the main reasons is that the Narus seem to be a little bit more quiet in the winter mornings than they are in the summer mornings. So it just makes them a little bit trickier to find when they're not roaring and giving away their position every 5 minutes. But we're not going to give up nonetheless. So we're going to see if we can find him. Otherwise, we're going to head towards the west. There's a lot of elephants out there. And we also have some very cool footage and a little bit of an explanation to show you on a very, very special animal at some point during this episode. So yeah, stick around, guys. Let's see what happens. The sun is just starting to poke up right over there. I'm sure you can see my face beautifully. It's golden hour. So yeah, it's starting to look like a beautiful morning, and hopefully that sun warms us up nice and quickly today. But yeah, let's get cracking. Right, so we've come across some cute little green wood hoopers calling and carrying on again this morning. There they go, just starting to fly off. You keep quiet so you can hear them. And there goes the last one. But yeah, all just coming together, doing a little bit of early morning rituals. You know, it's landing on a nice branch and just screaming and shouting together, letting everybody know that they are around and they are in charge of this particular little territory around here. So yeah, the green wood hoopoo, one of my favorite birds. Now, it wouldn't be Sofa Safari if we didn't stop and do a tree. And I've been slacking on trees recently. I'm sure some of you have noticed. And I've been threatening to do a leadwood for a very, very long time now. And I'm sorry that I've let you down on that front. But here is the mighty leadwood. This is actually my favorite species of tree. They are just wonderful, wonderful trees. For those of you that are interested in the scientific name, it is a Combretum imberbe, which is a cool name to say as well. Yeah, Combretum imberbe. But yeah, it's a beautiful tree. They're very strong. They're very powerful trees. They're very heavy trees. I mean, as the name would suggest, leadwood, right? I mean, it weighs 1.2 metric tons per cubic meter, which is just incredibly, incredibly heavy. So heavy that it doesn't actually sink, for, you know, and it's also impenetrable to termites. So because it's so dense, termites can't even get into it, and if you drop a piece into water, it just sinks straight down. Now, some of the best uses of this tree throughout the ages, I mean, obviously it's a very hard wood to work. For those of you that have ever worked wood before, you can imagine a wood that weighs 1.2 metric tons per cubic meter being incredibly hard to whittle down and to shape into anything. But one of the main things that they used it for in the past was for railway sleepers, because it is termite resistant. It will stand the test of time as far as weather is concerned, and it is so strong that it can have, you know, several tons worth of train going over it at any point in time. However, because of that, those early days in southern Africa where the railway lines were being set up, they were cutting down a tremendous amount of leadwood trees to get those railway sleepers to obviously lay mile after mile after mile of railway line. And that has led to the leadwood tree actually being excuse me, a little bit endangered, or fairly endangered, to a point now where you are no longer allowed to harvest it from nature. It is a protected tree, 100%. So the only way that you can actually get leadwood wood these days is by finding it and you know, repurposed wood essentially. And you can find some beautiful railway sleepers still. It costs an absolute fortune, but it makes a very, very good bar countertop. So look out for that if you want to spend a bit of bucks on your bar. But what I love about these trees, and there's a range of medicinal uses, but what I love about the trees is there's a, you know, what you can do, I've never tried it myself, but you can burn the wood and breathe in the smoke, and that's supposed to alleviate the symptoms of a cold or fever or, you know, headaches, something like that. And then what I've also heard is that you can burn it, get the ash, mix the ash with a bit of water, and that actually makes a bit of a paste. And you can brush your teeth with that. And I know a lot of trees you can do that, but apparently the leadwood's one of the best ones. So if you remember Chad's toothbrush episode, a number of episodes back when Sofa Safari was still just a little guy, Chad was trying to teach you about the magic warrior, the toothbrush tree, and he actually made a toothbrush. Go check it out. It was fascinating craftsmanship. But yeah, it made me think about the leadwood and how you can burn it, get the ash and get that paste to brush your teeth, so you have everything you need. And whenever you start looking at trees, you really start to realize, or plants and trees in general, you start to realize that Mother Nature really did think about everything as far as what we need and how we need to stay healthy. However, one of the things that I find incredibly interesting about leadwoods, and this is a theory, please bear in mind it is an absolute theory, there's no proof behind it, not like and this will make sense in a few seconds, but like mangrove trees, where they'll often have sacrificial branches, and that has been proven, where too much sodium has been absorbed from the seawater, and that tree starts to get a little bit toxic and pump all that sodium into one particular branch or into a number of leaves, and those leaves and branches start to die and fall off. Leadwoods are believed to also have sacrificial branches. So if you have a look at this one behind me, you'll see coming out the left hand side here, there's a dead branch. Up there's a number of dead branches. Just here in front of me, hanging over, there's a dead branch. And this is, as I say, the theory is it's a sacrificial branch. So as these trees bore down into the ground with their root systems, they really can't decide which way they're going to go and what nutrients they're going to absorb and so on and so forth. It just kind of, the membrane of those roots hits that mineral or nutrient and it absorbs it. And on occasion, trees will absorb too much of a good thing or too much of a bad thing. And it's believed that the leadwood has the capability of then pumping that bad toxin or nutrients or too much of it, that excess, into one of these sacrificial branches or limbs, where it then can be stored, and unfortunately that limb dies. So it's kind of like losing your arm for the sake of your body. So it's a pretty cool theory, that, but it is a theory with the leadwood. But yeah, it's a fascinating tree. It forms part of the Combretum family, like the bush willows that we've looked at. So this is a bush willow. Remember that four-podded seed, or that four-winged seed pod, sorry, which I can't find any at the moment around here. Let me have a look, but you might remember me from the very first episode of Sofa Safari peeling that one open and saying you can make tea out of it. Well, this is from the same family, the Combretum family, where you can do that. So yeah, great tree. A lot of people say that it looks like crocodile skin. I don't really see it. I just think it looks armor plated, man, to a point where and something I've noticed throughout my career is you never really see leopards climbing these trees. I have seen once or twice, but not often. And my theory is that the wood is just too strong. The bark is just too hard for a leopard to sink its claws into and easily climb up. So maybe that's why leopards don't climb them too much. But yeah, great to see this beautiful one. My favorite specimen is all the way in the east, but we're very far from there this morning. So I thought we'd stop with my second favorite one and have a look at him. So thanks very much, buddy. Anyway, let's see what else we can find this morning, guys. All right, so we've just left that leadwood, and one other thing that I wanted to mention to you guys is because it's so strong and so hard, 1.2 tons per cubic meter, these trees tend to stand for a very long time. So if you look behind me here, there's this big leadwood skeleton. Now, I don't know how old this is or how long it's been dead and has been standing like this, but it's quite a vital part of the ecosystem to have these dead trees. From a raptor point of view, from our big birds like the eagles, the vultures and so forth. So they love to perch at the top of these things. And the reason why big birds like that like to perch at the top of these trees is because they've got huge wings. I mean, if you think about a vulture, even a whiteback vulture is like a 6-foot wingspan. So when it wants to take off or when it wants to land, it doesn't want to land in one of these very bushy, proper trees. It's going to get its wings all caught up and so on. So yeah, these big old leadwoods that stand for decades and decades. I think there was even a living leadwood, just to go back to the live ones, that was carbon dated to over 1,000 years old. So yeah, they do stand for a long time, and even after death they stand for a very, very long time. And eventually things do start to utilize it. As I say, the birds, the big birds, and if I'm looking just up the trunk, there is a little hole in there, so it looks like maybe some of the barbets have got into there to make their nest, or maybe it was a hornbill that's made their nest there. So yeah, it slowly but surely becomes useful to so many things. Maybe genets start to live in there, like Chad saw in his last drive, in the cavities. Some Swainson spurfowl losing their mind behind me now. Drama queens. But yeah, so it does become quite a good part of the ecosystem, and it's always worthwhile to stop and spend a bit of time with these ancient African legends that stick around. But yeah, anyway, let's carry on. Let's see if maybe a leopard's trying to grab one of these little Swainson spurfowls. I'd like that very much. I don't think the spurfowl would like it very much, but I would. So as you can see, it's not just the birds that like to live in these trees, it's also the little squirrels. you know, all these little cavities that slowly start to form. I mean, it's just a tremendous amount of wildlife that will utilize this. All the smaller guys will really find a good home here, and that's a very safe place for a squirrel to live and raise its young. I guess the only thing it needs to worry about up there is the occasional invasion of a snake or something to that effect, or maybe something like a gymnogene bird or an African Harrier hawk for the birding purist. The new name is an African Harrier hawk. And these birds will actually land on the side of trees like this, and they're quite specialized in terms of getting into these holes and or at least with their beak and trying to get whatever they can. A good opportunity here to spend a bit of time with a red-billed hornbill. Busy doing his morning routine, having a bit of a shower, maybe doing a bit of hornbill yoga. You know, he's having a good time over there, getting all the little pests and parasites out of his feathers. And the reason why I wanted to stop and chat about him is because I was talking about that leadwood a bit earlier and the hole in the tree, and I said it was probably a barbet that was living there, which it most probably is. But I just wanted to bring everyone's mind or let everybody know that these birds, the hornbills, all hornbills, actually live in holes in trees as well. But they have a fascinating structure behind this whole thing. So once they've acquired a hole, and remember the males and females, the mating pair, are monogamous for the season, but once they've acquired that hole that they want to use as a nesting site, the female will actually go inside the hole, and once she's inside, she'll pluck all of her feathers, and she makes it into this beautiful warm home, you know, very motherly home. And at the same time, her and the male will start to patch that hole up. So they're basically closing the entrance to their nest up and keeping it nice and safe. All they do is they leave a little gap just at the top. So they basically patch it up with mud and excrement and all sorts of goodies, and they just leave a little gap at the top just so that the male can keep flying out and about and finding food to bring it back to the female so that he can feed her. If you can imagine her on the inside there, she looks like a plucked chicken. There he goes. But she looks like a plucked chicken. So she's not very well adapted to looking after herself at that point, because she is just trying to, look after those eggs and hatch the babies. And once they do hatch, she will then, along with the help of the male, break out of that hole. They'll then patch it back up, leaving just a gap at the top where they can come back and feed the chicks every once in a while. Now, unfortunately, on certain occasions, the male, while the female is entombed inside the nest looking after the little ones, the male might be out and about and he might get killed and eaten by something. In which case the female is often, certain death is on the horizon for her. But it is something that has been documented a few times. It's not widely documented, where another male will actually come into the scene and help that female. So he basically picks up the reins and helps where the other male left off. So quite a beautiful thing to know that there's some compassion within wildlife. And Brit's just pointing to behind me at the moment where a little family of Inyala is starting to pop out. And for those of you that have been to Tandatula before, you'll know we have our own little residential herd of Inyala that come in and around the tents. Maybe not in, but around. And they're just a lovely animal. They're super peaceful. And here come all the girls. You got the little one there with the slightly older female. And then coming down the road last, well at the moment at least, is a young male. So you can see, hopefully with that camera, that he's just got some little horns starting to protrude out of his head. And he's also starting to look a little bit darker than the females. And slowly but surely, as he ages, he's going to turn basically into like a very dark grey, almost black animal. Whereas the females stay this kind of chalky brown with the very prolific white stripes. I guess that's the right word. The males do keep those white stripes, but they don't stand out nearly as much as the girls do. Anyway, there they go. Beautiful little family. They're what we call mixed feeders, so they will eat both, seed pods, fruits, but also grasses. So they graze and they browse, just like a kudu. So you can see them just peacefully feeding through here, and as I was saying a bit earlier, they are mixed feeders. They do primarily browse though, so that means they do eat fruits and seed pods and leaves more often than anything. But they're also known, and you do see it from time to time, especially at Tandatula, where they come onto our nice green lawn and they eat those beautiful brand new shoots of green grass. So they do enjoy mixing their diet every once in a while. But I was saying about the male earlier and how dark. Ooh, girls are getting up to a bit of mischief here. But I was just saying how dark the males can get, and it's actually regarded as one of the animals in the world with the greatest degree of sexual dimorphism, which means difference between male and female. So they quite literally look like different animals once the male has become matured. And we'll have to try and get one of those. Oh, actually, I think we have got one of those in one of our sofa safaris, but we'll see if a big male pops out here this morning that we can get in focus for you as well. Wonderful little scene that we've just come across in the shade over there. We've got a big elephant cow, and it looks like she has her older generation youngster with her, and then the very small one is obviously her brand new baby. But it's often around these times of the day, you know, what is the time now? It's 9:30, going on 10 o'clock, that elephants decide to have a bit of a sleep in the shade. So they find a nice comfy spot, and they very often just stand still and they sleep. She maybe looks like she's waking up, yeah, throwing a bit of sand, but they could have been standing here for a good while before we got here, and we maybe even woke them up, but they often just go straight back to sleep. They're not too perturbed by us. But it is one of the sweetest things to see a little elephant family having a sleep standing up. Contrary to popular belief, though, elephants do lie down to sleep, you know, when they have a proper sleep at night, and they do sleep, you know, probably for extended periods at night, but not too long. Unfortunately, the gravity is not the same for a 4-ton, 5-ton, 6-ton animal as it is for a human being. And unfortunately, if an elephant should lie flat for a bit too long, just the pressure of their immense lungs, heart, stomach, all their different organs acting upon each other can lead to some pretty severe damage. So they do have to stand up fairly often, and they can't sleep like we do for 8 hours at a time. But yeah, as soon as it starts getting a little bit warm, they pop into some shade, they have a bit of a snooze. And one of my absolute favorite things to see when this whole family, or when a family is having a sleep, is you watch the babies, or at least like maybe the 3-4-year-old toddlers, trying to stand and sleep as well. But you know, they haven't kind of gained the center of gravity yet that mom has. So while they're staying there sleeping, they're kind of rocking, and then eventually you just see them kind of collapse and fall down on their side and have a nice little snooze. And it's a lot easier for them because they don't have the heft yet just to lie flat on their side. But it's quite fun to watch them literally fall asleep on their feet and then fall over and carry on sleeping throughout the entire thing. So yeah, the little guy here with his mom, he's not too interested in sleeping. The very small one, I think he's still trying to fiddle there with his trunk and his tail, and maybe trying to get some milk from mom. So yeah, very sweet situation.
Are we in their way?
The little one is tiny. Yeah. Oh, shame, he fell. I think they're going to go up here. That little baby is brand new, huh? Oh, shame. Can't walk on the sand. Alright, let me try to go back with them. Shame, I think I need to go back so this baby can actually walk up here. Doesn't look healthy. Do that.
What's wrong with him?
I don't know.
Not just brand new.
Yeah, but he's got like something hanging there on his stomach. No such thing as a bad time spent with dwarf mongoose. That was so much fun to just have a quick peek at and watch their little little strokes of naughtiness. Oh, here comes one. And if you sit with them long enough, they actually become very calm and relaxed, and they just carry on going about their daily business as if you're not really there, so they kind of lose interest in you. But yeah, look at these two. and funny enough actually get quite curious. So you can see these are two youngsters of the business, and remember we call a group of mongoose a business. These are a couple of youngsters that are getting very curious in our vehicles, our nice shiny new vehicles. Coming to have a closer look. Hey little guys. That whistling sound you're hearing all around us is from them. That's their language. Little chirps and whistles and squeaks, and these little sightings of the smaller creatures that truly make a safari quite special. You know, when you suddenly realize it's not just about the big things and the lions and the big teeth and the kills. It's also about these little guys that are out and about here every day doing what they do. They're just wonderful little species bouncing around. And if something like this doesn't put a smile on your face, then I don't think there is anything that will. What we've come across is a little family of red-billed buffalo weavers at their communal nest. So that little clump of mess that you see in the middle there is actually their nest. And you can have several mating pairs that will frequent the same nest, and they just kind of build this big nest. In fact, on many occasions I've seen them build it so big that it eventually just falls out of the tree. So they kind of develop a bit too quickly. But they seem to be having a little bit of a family tiff this morning about something. I'm not too sure what's going on. Or maybe they're just excited about something. But as I've mentioned in previous sofa safaris, this is one of what we call the Little Five, having the name buffalo in their name, red-billed buffalo weaver. And obviously the African buffalo being a member of the Big Five and probably the most dangerous of the Big Five. However, the red-billed buffalo weaver is on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of danger, a negative 14. So don't worry about them, they won't peck your eyeballs out. But they are fun to watch, particularly around their nest like this when they're making a whole bunch of noise. And there is also a fork-tailed drongo sitting just behind them for good measure, because fork-tailed drongos love to watch drama go down. They're always there. Always hoping that they can get a free snack off something. They're kind of like a hyena, the hyena of birds. They've always got a scheme for something. However, they don't scavenge. They typically hunt their own insects and stuff flying out of these nests, flying out of the grass, whatever it might be. You know, I have an eagle-eyed wife, to be fair. Once again, as we're driving, just going past some beautiful little rocky outcrops here. Not far away from Tundatula, you get the little, ooh, go back, quickly. And she says, I hope they're still sitting there. And I thought to myself, what could it be? Could it be a leopard sitting there with the cubs? Could it be what? Could it be this? Could it be that? And we stopped the vehicle. Just wait for the Swainson Spurfowl to lose his mind here. Thanks, buddy. Have a good day. So we stopped the vehicle, turn off, and I have a quick look where she's pointing, and we've got a beautiful colony of plated lizards busy sitting there. So there's been a few people that have requested reptiles, and for one, Tim Verge, I know you've been requesting that we show you some more snakes, but snakes are not the easiest things to find out and about in the bush. They are here, they're here in abundance, and unfortunately as we go further and further into winter, the prevalence of snakes becomes less and less. Even the prevalence of these plated lizards is going to become less and less. So to see them all here sunning themselves, trying to pick up a bit of energy, of course, you remember they're cold-blooded, which means that they absorb their energy directly from their environment, not so much from feeding, and that's why things like this don't need to eat nearly as much as you or me. But you often find, or not often, because this is not something that you see often in this area of the Greater Kruger. I think if you go a little bit further north and west, you get more rocky outcrops, and therefore the prevalence of these plated lizards becomes a bit greater. But it's just wonderful to see this little colony coming out and sunbathing this morning. And just having a good time. I mean, they usually live in these loose colonies around the rocks, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 individuals. I actually have not seen all that many in my career, so I can't give you a from experience point of view, but that seems to be about how many there are. I think up there at the moment there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then on the other rock a little bit towards the left there's 5 and 6. So yeah, nice little loose colonies, all just muttering or messing around at the rocks here. They're quite a big lizard. They can get up to about 70 centimeters in length, or about a meter close there. So, you know, including the tail. And from what I can remember about them, because I don't see them too often, is that their tail, like most things, like most lizards, or like a few lizards, actually can store fat and reserves for them to feed on throughout those dry winter months, or to absorb the nutrients that they need, or the sustenance that they need. So yeah, very cool little lizards, or big lizards I should say, and not something that you'll happen upon very often while out on safari. Alright, so it's been a good morning so far. We tried to look for the lions and that kind of failed. We were hoping to find a leopard and that kind of failed, but we saw some cool elephants. That little baby was very sweet. Some cool mongoose, some cool birds. Got to chat about that leadwood finally. But if you recall from earlier this morning, myself and Britt, or rather I made the promise, said that we were going to show you some really cool footage of a very special animal. Probably the most special animal, to be honest. So a couple of days ago we were out filming sofa photography, you know, the one with shutter speed and all of that. Go check that out if you're into photography. And we got the call from one of my colleagues who had, from a different camp that we share this area with, and they're busy caretaking that camp, obviously, while we have no guests. And he unfortunately, or fortunately rather, for the little animal, found this creature stuck underneath the fence. So their lodge has a bit of a fence going around it, just to keep all the baddies out, like the hyenas and so on. But every once in a while, another smaller animal might get stuck, and you do need to keep an eye out for that to help them and so forth. But so he called us on the radio and said, "Look, guys, I've got this little special animal that I have saved, and I'm going to be taking it out to release it somewhere in the bush and see it on its way." And we got to the sighting, and that particular little animal was the very special, the crowning jewel of African sightings, a pangolin, also known as a ground pangolin, or I believe a Temminck's pangolin, and then I think also Cape pangolin. Anyway, there's many names. We'll just refer to it as a pangolin. Now, the world over has, I believe, 4 species of pangolin in the family. So actually in Asia you get some different pangolin species. The tree pangolins, they climb the trees, and they are super cute. So go check some YouTube footage out on those. But here in Africa we only get the one, or in southern Africa we only get the one, the ground pangolin. And this particular sighting was only the 5th time that I've seen one of these animals in my entire life. So it is very special when you consider that someone like myself, or Chad, or Foreman, or Scotch, for those of you that know our other guides, Civilized, Ginger, we can often spend, 6 to 8 hours a day out here, every day, for year after year after year. And to have only seen 5 of them, I think is quite, it kind of speaks volumes for how rare this animal is. Now, unfortunately, the pangolin family the world over is regarded as the most poached mammal species, and it is a mammal, by the way, very interesting looking mammal, but we'll get to that now. It is regarded as the most poached mammal species on the planet, or family on the planet, with estimations over the last 10 years or last decade of over 1 million pangolins being poached from the wild. That's very sad. And some of you may have heard on the news every once in a while, somewhere in Southeast Asia or Far East Asia, they will bust a shipment of tons of pangolin scales. And as Britt plays the footage for you here, you'll see they are comprised of all these little scales that fit beautifully on top of each other, and this allows the animal to roll into this very tight ball of armor that can stick out to the outside world, keeping it safe from things like hyenas, leopards, lions. And having seen footage of lions trying to play with a pangolin, it's just kind of like a football after a while. It's a soccer ball. They can't really get into it. They leave it alone and carry on, and the pangolin gets up and runs away. But unfortunately, that defensive mechanism that they employ to keep the leopards and the lions off their back makes it very easy for human beings to poach them. Should they find one, very tricky to find one. But when it rolls into a ball, you just simply pick it up, put it into a bag, and there you go. You've got your pangolin. So very sad to think about it that way. And unfortunately, very similar to the rhinos that we spoke about the other day, the main reason pangolins are poached is for medicinal beliefs or traditional beliefs that come from those keratin scales. And it is keratin, so like your fingernail, very similar to a rhino horn. Not exactly keratin, these things, but very close on the molecular level. And people around the world, particularly unfortunately in Southeast Asia and in Far East Asia, believe that these substances have very strong medicinal properties. Of course, science has disproved these or tested all these materials, these substances, and has not found any conclusive evidence whatsoever that anything beneficial comes from ingesting these products. I do remember reading one study that suggested, it was a suggestion, that if you consumed, I believe it was something like 100 grams of keratin or rhino horn, for instance, per kilogram of body weight, that your blood pressure might drop. Might being the key word there. So in other words, just chew your nails, guys. Smoke your nails, do whatever you want. Mix them into your porridge. You're going to get the same benefit as eating pangolin scales or rhino horn. So please, for the sake of these wild animals, humans, anybody that might be involved, that might be watching this, it is not worth it, guys. Let's rather protect and enjoy these animals as much as we possibly can. Take photographs of them and watch them just be in nature doing what they naturally should be doing. It's far better than deciding to eat everything that we come across. But anyway, as I was saying a little bit earlier, the pangolin is a mammal. It's a very strange looking mammal. A lot of people liken it to an armadillo that you get in the northern Americas, which is quite similar, but that is not a mammal, I don't believe. I'll have to think about what that is. I think it's actually a rodent or something, but don't quote me on that. I don't work in North America. I've never seen an armadillo before. But the pangolin is a very, very special form of mammal. And the one that you're busy viewing in the footage right now was quite a large sized one, which led us to believe it was a male. He was easily over the length of about 1 meter. So, from tail to head. And they are very sweet. It took a while for him to open up and to come out. In fact, while we sat around just watching him, trying to take photographs and just film him and just spend time with this beautiful animal, he did poke his head out every once in a while. He had a look at all of us, and then he tucked his head back in. And eventually, I think the 5 or 6 of us that were there decided, hey, let's give this guy a little bit more space. So we stepped back probably only about 2-3 feet further, and that just gave him the confidence to pop out of his little shell, if you will, his little soccer ball roll-up situation, and have a look around beautifully. Look at all of us. We got some beautiful images, which have a look at Chad's Instagram, Tundatula's Instagram, my Instagram, and Sofa Photography that will be coming out before this, so yesterday at this point. And you'll see some beautiful photographs of him. And then eventually he got up and he opened himself up completely and he started walking away. And they've got just the cutest way of walking. We didn't quite see it, but very often they walk just on their back legs with their front feet up, and their tail kind of props them up and pushes them forward. It's very, very sweet to see. And he just kind of walked across the open area and into a little bush where he found himself a little bit of safety, surrounded by the bushes. And we went to check there again that afternoon, and he was gone. But I can guarantee he wouldn't have gone far. He would have waited for the cover of darkness to come out. What was quite interesting is at one point he did start pushing his little tongue out, and I don't know if Britt got okay, she's shaking her head. She did get a bit of footage of that, so there it is for you guys. But yeah, his little tongue did start coming out, and their tongues are ridiculous. They can stick out of their mouth. I'm not going to put a measurement on it, but in my past sightings, I've seen their tongues probably easily 1/2 foot, maybe even bigger, stick out of their tongue, out of their mouth. And what that's for is these animals eat termites and they eat ants. So that little tongue can just go straight down into one of those little termite holes or those ant holes and soak them all up and eat them. So it's a very adapted little thing, but it was quite cute to watch him sticking his tongue out at us and smiling for the camera. So it was a beautiful sighting, and I hope you guys really enjoy the footage. We all really enjoyed it. It was very inspirational to see one of these creatures once again. I think the last time I saw one was about 2 years ago. For example, and I mean, you can go look through the records or ask around. People just do not see these animals, and we always laugh, because when you have a seasoned safari goer that joins us, they've obviously seen leopards, they've seen lions, they've seen all these things. You say, what do you want to see? And they say pangolin, and you know that there's not even that much of a chance of you seeing one. So unfortunately we didn't have any guests to share it with this time, but we have all of you to share it with, and we hope you enjoy one of the world's most endangered yet beautiful creatures that you can hope to happen upon while out on safari in Africa. Guys, that's it for this episode of Sofa Safari. I hope you have enjoyed bumbling around with me and Britt this morning. It was a bit of a tough morning in terms of sightings, but we hope you enjoy the pangolin sighting. There's no such thing as a bad day in Africa. There's no such thing as a bad day on safari. So have a great day wherever you are. Post your comments, your questions, your remarks below, and we'll happily come back to you and try and fulfill those requests for you and so forth. So yeah, until next time, guys. Cheers.